It also tells him that from now on, that lady will continue guiding him, as this is necessary for this country and this world. It then flies off into the distance before telling him to be strong if he wishes to protect those he treasures. Hey warriors, how is it going? You see me, I am Itachi Uchiha, the hidden Hokage of Leaf Village. Just kidding, you know I am just an AI, but behind this shape, I am here to entertain you with enormous amazing recaps of all animes you can imagine. So without talking too much, let's dive in our story.
Wake up to reality. Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world.
Back in town, Mira and Ren go to the guild and tell Gerard about the Emperor and his plan to attack the town using 3,000 monsters. Gerard calls all the adventurers in Aspire and also asks for help from the town watch. They prepare to begin the defensive war. With only 180 adventurers at their disposal, things look pretty bad for them, but then Lamaya joins the fray and encourages them to battle. In the meantime, Tiki and Anna fight against the red goblins and try to keep them from going above ground. Tiki uses physical enhancement to crush them all, but he fears destroying the cave and switches back to normal combat. While fighting so many goblins, he soon hears the girls' voices and notices that the crystal ball they had was useless, and the goblins are now attacking them as well. He makes his way through the monsters, saves them, and makes them apologize for their actions. He then tells Ren to look after them and goes on a full-on monster hunt to clean all 500 of them underground. Back at the guild, Lamia and the others assess their situation, and Lamaya says that she will use one of her tactical class large area spells to thin out the number of monsters because there's no other way for them to fight so many at once. But using such a spell early on will leave her mana reserves low, and she won't be able to do any big attacks anymore. Hearing all this, Ren tells her to leave the area of effect spell to her and explains that she might be able to cast a spell similar to an erupting volcano. She tries to explain the science behind using steam energy to create a bomb, but it flies over their heads just like math lessons fly over mine. Lemia, however, says that she trusts her and lets her take care of it. The next morning, as the monsters get close to their walls, Ren starts casting her spell. She begins by creating a massive hole in the ground using earth magic, making most of the monsters fall in. She then fills the basin with water before creating a giant ball of molten metal on top of them and tossing it inside. The metal cools down quickly and creates a seal on top of the hole before erupting with great force from all the steam that forms underneath. The huge explosion surprises everyone, and Lamaya leads the counterattack, with Gerard marching the adventurers into enemy forces. Meanwhile, the Emperor and Kasim look over them from a cliff. The Emperor says that watching Lamaya in action was well worth this on its own, but seeing Ren reveal such a destructive spell was a treat on top. He then says that it's about time they face the real danger. We then see an adventurer report to Gerard that 200 monsters enhanced with crimson packs have joined the battle. This makes him really worried, but then they see Tiki arrive at the camp with Anna and the two girls. He fills Gerard in about what happened underground and asks him about Mira and Ren before heading out to help them. On the other hand, we see Mira and Ren getting tired from all the fighting and complimenting Lemia on still being so full of energy. Just then, they notice the massive horde of crimson-packed monsters, and Lemia tells them to buy her 30 seconds so she can cast a strong spell and take care of them. Mira and Ren rush forward and destroy a bunch of small fries until Lemia casts the AoE spell and reduces the enemies in front of them to only 3 red ogres, who seem to be leading this army of monsters. The 3 of them take on 1 orc each, but Ren's attack seems too weak to do any damage to the monster, and it walks up to her to deliver the finishing blow. In her final moments, she says that even if she falls here, Tiki will come and save them all. She regrets not telling him about her true feelings, but just before the monster can strike her down, Tiki jumps in and blocks it with a single hand. He tells her to tell him all about it once they are done with this war. Lamia and Mira soon follow up and tend to Ren, while Tiki pushes the red ogre back before grabbing it and tossing it onto the ground. He then jumps over it and knocks it out with a heavy punch to its chest. After that, he walks back to meet up with the girls, and Mira asks him what enhancement level he uses. He tells her that he used level 100, or else he wouldn't be a match for these monsters. Tiki then asks Lamaya about their current situation and whether they will be able to continue fighting, but she says that they would barely be able to hold them back at their current strength. Tiki introduces them to Milo and Mello and tells them to keep the monsters from attacking him so he can fight the 3 red ogres. Hopefully, once he defeats them, the monsters will fall back. With that, Tiki challenges the 3 ogres to a battle. We then see the Emperor looking at the battle, where he says that it is all according to what that lady planned, referring to a secret mastermind who's even above him in this scheme. Back at the camp, we see Anna attending to the injured soldiers while hearing about the situation on the front line. She decides to put her faith in Tiki, but then a hooded figure walks past her and whispers something in her ear, which makes her walk towards the battlefield like a mindless puppet. On the other hand, Lamaya and the other adventurers are fighting the small monsters, while Tiki is dealing with the ogres in a 3 versus 1 situation. Despite the difference in their numbers, Tiki manages to knock one of them down and finishes the job thanks to his insane magic power. But then, the ground starts shaking, and a dragon emerges from beneath, devouring the ogres for breakfast. Seeing the beast, Lamia wonders why it's here, because dragons normally never bother themselves with interfering in battles between lesser species. Everyone gathers around Tiki, and we find out that the twin-headed golden dragon is also part of that mysterious mastermind's plan to test him. Tiki tells Lamaya and the others to evacuate the town in preparation for the worst-case scenario, and says that he will fight the dragon alone. Ren says that she will stay with him, and Mira tells them to come back alive, or else she won't forgive them. With that, they all head back, but Tiki tells Ren to stay behind as well, because being a woman, she would only get in his way. Besides that, if the dragon chooses to attack her, he will instinctively try to defend her, as the Sigma male that he is, and that would certainly be the reason behind his defeat. Ren says that she understands and focuses on defending herself while finding ways to support Tiki from a distance. Tiki then runs forward to face the dragon. On his way, he calls out to Ariel, but she doesn't respond. He wonders if the first time was just a fluke. Regardless, he enhances himself to level 100 and jumps forward to start the fight with a heavy punch. The dragon blocks the attack with its claw and strikes back with a barrage of fireballs, followed by a tail whip attack. Ren tries to help Tiki, but the dragon's other head shoots a fireball toward her as a warning and tells her to stay back like the waste of space she is. Tiki loses a lot of HP to the tail whip attack and wonders why a dragon would be helping the monsters attack them. Just then, Anna walks up to him and says that she needs to fix his wounds, but Tiki asks why her dumb plot armor is there. This snaps Anna back to her senses. She looks around, confused, and wonders how she got there. But the dragon uses this chance to launch a ball of blue flame toward Tiki. Ren rushes forward to save him, but Anna pushes Tiki to the side and tanks the hit herself. The attack blows her stomach away. In her final moments, she lies in Tiki's arms and apologizes for her mistake. She recalls how he was the only one who saw her as a woman and not a tool. She asked him to become her friend if she manages to survive this, but then she breathes her last and dies in his arms. Seeing her pass away makes Tiki really mad. He starts cursing himself for not taking his powers seriously and training enough. He then calls out to Ariel and says that he knows she is listening. He tells her to give it to him. He lets out a manly roar and tells her to give it to him hard. Ariel responds to his call and says that this was the kind of strong emotion she was looking for from him. Tiki suddenly finds himself in another plane where he talks to Ariel. She apologizes for not being able to give her power to him like before. She tells him that they must form a formal pact first. To do that, the summoner must call out to the spirit and ask for their power. Secondly, they must be willing to accept that power in full. After learning about this, Tiki apologizes for shouting at her, and they make the pact. With this, Tiki becomes a full-fledged summoner and comes back to his senses in the real world. With his newfound power, he tells Ren to take care of Anna's body and then walks up to the dragon while telling Ariel that they will settle it with one blow. Seeing him, the dragon commends his courage. Tiki asks the dragon about its goal and what it would take for it to withdraw from this war. The dragon tells him that if he shows it his true power, it will answer all his questions and leave this place. After that, it launches a combined flame breath attack from both its mouths. Tiki counters it with a strong windstream attack using his fist. At first, they seem equal in power, but Tiki soon overpowers the beast and tosses it onto the ground. After this, the dragon says that it's happy to see his strength and reveals that it serves a certain lady. Its goal was to test Tiki's true strength. It also tells him that from now on, that lady will continue guiding him as this is necessary for this country and this world. It then flies off into the distance before telling him to be strong if he wishes to protect those he treasures. On the other hand, we see the Emperor reporting to the mysterious lady alongside another hooded servant. He tells her that Tiki has formed a pact with the Wind Spirit. The lady says that it's time to prepare his next guidance, and that after a town comes a country. After the war, a spire slowly starts rebuilding, but despite their victory, they suffered great losses. We see Tiki placing flowers on Anna's grave and telling her to watch over him from the heavens. After that, he goes to see Lamaya and the others and introduces them to Ariel by summoning her in her mini form. While talking about it, they notice a carriage coming into the town with an escort of maids, and Lemia notes that they bear the royal family's crest. The carriage eventually stops near Lemia's house, and a purple-haired girl named Alcena walks out of it. She introduces herself as the daughter of Marcus Norman and announces that she is there on behalf of King Gilmere. She says that she is there to ask them for their help and requests them to come to the royal capital. On their way, Lemia tells Alcena to explain the current situation of the country. She tells them that for the last 30 years, the country has been governed by two factions, one supporting the current king and the other supporting his younger brother, Duke Dorsham. King Gilmer gained his current position through diplomacy and by proactively reaching out to other nations, while Duke Dorsham is more of a conservative. According to one of King Gilmer's policies, they have sent out some of their mages to other nations, and this can affect their dominance on the map as the Magic Kingdom. The opposition has finally decided to take up arms against them, and a rebellion war is just around the corner. They are hoping for their help in this battle. With that, they arrive at the capital, and Tiki notices that the place is practically a ghost town. Lemia asks Alcena if the king said anything about Tiki and Ren, and she says that he insisted on bringing them along. Just then, an arrow flies toward her, but Tiki grabs it midair like a Giga Chad and saves her life. We find out that it was shot by one of the Duke's men, who reports to him about the arrival of the Otherworlders in the capital. Back at the castle, Tiki and everyone else walk into the courtroom, and Alcena introduces them to the head mage, Bella, the supreme commander of their army, General Simela, and the only daughter of the king, Princess Charlotte. Just then, the king walks in as well, and commends them on their efforts in the defense of Aspire. Lemia decides to skip the formalities and asks him what's up. The king tells everyone else to leave them alone, and then tells Lemia that she hasn't changed at all. It looks like they are old friends. Lemia tells him that she will lend him a hand, but only if he agrees to her conditions. She then says that they will return to Aspire for now, and she also wants him to honestly tell them if he's the one behind summoning Tiki and Ren to this world. The king decides to bite the bullet and says that he is indeed the one who ordered for them to be summoned. Hearing this, Tiki steps forward and asks how he could take their peaceful lives away and summon them here to slay people for him. Mira protests in their favor as well. Gilmere says that he will take full responsibility, and then they all go to their rooms. Lemia and Mira go to talk to the generals, while Tiki and Ren talk about this new revelation. Just then, Alcena knocks on their door and says that the princess wants to talk to them. With that, Charlotte walks in, apologizes to them for the inconvenience, and reveals that she is the one who summoned them to this world. She explains that she conducted a lot of research before casting the spell, and was torn between summoning someone out of their peaceful life and making them fight for them. But in the end, she decided to do what was expected of her as the princess of this kingdom. She then says that during the summoning, one of the Duke's assassins slipped in, and it made the spell become unstable. She only wished to summon Tiki, who possessed an insane amount of magic, but due to the assassin's attack, Ren got taken in as well. Instead of getting summoned to the palace, they got teleported to a random field near Aspire. She says that it took her quite a long time to find where they were, and apologizes for not only ruining their lives, but also for being an incompetent waste of space. After hearing all this and seeing her cry, Tiki and Ren tell her to lift her head up. They say that they forgive her for everything she did, and that they understand the desire to save those who are precious to her. Charlotte says that once the nation is at peace, she will do everything to make sure that she can return them to their worlds, even if it costs her soul. Tiki says that they will help her in this war so they can all come out of this happy. Just then, Lemia walks in and tells Tiki to come outside. She has him fight Sumela, who wants to see if they are really as strong as the king expects. Tiki proves his dominance by parrying all her attacks and breaking her sword with an enhanced blade. After that, they both start fighting hand to hand, and Tiki manages to knock Sumela down and gets on top of her. This makes her really excited, and she asks him if he would be willing to knock her up as well. She then asks him for that special white thing inside his body, making Tiki cry out in disbelief. Later that night, Tiki looks out at the sky with Ariel and talks to her about being afraid of using too much strength against human enemies, but if it means protecting Ren, he would be willing to do it. After that, he goes back inside to check up on Ren and accidentally walks in on her dressing up. On the other hand, we see Charlotte praying at the Holy Temple as the Emperor walks up to her. We find out that he's called Cardinal Ludera, and Charlotte doesn't know that he is the one behind the attack on Aspire. The next morning, we see Tiki walking around the castle looking for Ren. He eventually finds her watering some flowers and tells her to get her plots up into the courtroom because Lemia wants them to join the meeting with the generals. On the other hand, we see the Duke having a meeting with his generals. Two of the Marquises seem to be having a discussion over making their next move, with Marcus Nan suggesting that they assemble their forces and surround the royal capital immediately, while Marcus Marquise says that they should first assess the abilities of these two otherworlders before launching a proper attack. He adds that according to their intel, one of them can even summon spirits and says that they should play their cards right. In the end, the Duke sides with Milgen and gives him permission to assemble their forces and lead them to the capital. On the other hand, Samela and Bella report to the king about the Duke's army marching towards Winnifix and tell him that they have 3,000 soldiers ready to deploy, with another 6,000 on standby. Bella says that she also has 300 mages ready to fight, with another 600 as backup. The king tells them to defend the capital with all their might, and they move to the tactical meeting room, where they form a plan to meet with the Duke's forces in the south the next morning, with Tiki helping them as well. Tiki feels worried about using his powers against humans, but Lamia tells him to grow some balls, and Samela encourages him with a promise to marry him after the war, making Tiki that much more worried. Later that night, Tiki goes to see Ren, who seems too tense about participating in this war. He tells her that she doesn't have to take part in it because she got there as a mistake, but she tells Tiki that she jumped into the circle of her own free will and that she will fight alongside him. She also tells him to spend the night in her room, and they both sit down together, with Ren resting her head over his shoulder. It looks like Tiki will finally become a man tonight, but as he tries to grab her hand, he notices something and tells her that it's time to call it a night. Meanwhile, we see Mira and Lamia talking about Ren over some tea, and Mira decides to go check up on her. But Lamia notices something while looking outside the window and says that she might have become paranoid as well. After some time, we see a hooded assassin standing outside the window on a tree, and it turns out Marcus Marcis sent him to assassinate Tiki and Ren during the night to make a name for himself. Unfortunately for the assassin, Tiki already noticed him earlier and put some pillows in their bed, covered with a blanket. The assassin stabs the pillows, and Tiki and the others catch him red-handed in the room. Tiki starts talking about how he noticed him earlier, but the assassin doesn't care about him jerking himself off and uses this chance to attack Ren. Seeing this, Tiki immediately turns his physical enhancement on, and he starts pounding him really hard, saying that he won't ever let anyone hurt the people he has sworn to protect. After beating him up for some time, Lamia stops Tiki, saying that's enough, but the assassin slips out from under him and decides to isekai himself by passionately hurling himself into the ground. The next morning, Gilmore's army faces Marcus Nan's force, consisting of 1,000 soldiers. Tiki begins the war by sending a warning their way using a wind spell and blasting the ground just in front of the enemy forces. They hope that it will make them stop for some time, but to their surprise, Nilgen and his men raise their hands and cast a bunch of fireballs and water bullets using magical rings and strike their army. This confuses them at first, but Tiki uses his cheat abilities to zoom in and tells Lamia about the special rings. She says that those are magical stones and wonders where they got the capital to prepare 1,000 of them for all their men. She then adds that these rings can use up the caster's life force if they run out of magic and continue casting, and it can be lethal if someone without a proper understanding of magical items uses it. As expected, Nilgan's army continues using the magic rings and quickly drains themselves out. Seeing them struggle like this makes Gilmore's army happy, and they say that they might not even have to fight back. They just need to defend for long enough, and the enemies would put themselves down on their own. This makes Tiki and Ren uncomfortable, and they look at Lamia for a response. Samela says that even if they are on the other side, they are part of their kingdom, and Gilmore won't want unnecessary casualties either. Lamia says that she might have a plan and asks Ren for help. Tiki puts up a barrier in front of them using Ariel's wind magic, and Mira protects Ren from any stray shots until she prepares a special spell in combination with the other royal mages. They suddenly make it rain. Ren then uses lightning magic and shocks the enemy forces, making them fall unconscious. Nilgen feels pretty drained as well, and he gets on his knees, but then he notices the Duke's assistant, Animecaps, walking up to him and telling him what just happened. Nilgen asks him why they were losing, and he tells him about the draining effect of the ring, and then stabs him before telling him that he has served his purpose. And with that, the war comes to an end. Later that night, we see Kasem and Grammy drinking at a bar, and Kasem takes out a small gadget and says that the next time he sees Teki, he will make him lick the dirt off the floor. The next morning, Ren wakes Tiki up using her special oral skills, but Tiki ends up running to the bathroom due to eating too much Indian food last night. After that, they meet up with Lamia and Mira, who tell them that the king has summoned them all to the courtroom. They all go to see what was up, and the king says that the princess wants to reward them for their achievements in the war, and lets them pick special weapons from the royal collection. Lamia gets a magic ring. Tiki picks up a Japanese-looking katana. Ren chooses a fancy staff, and Mira takes a high-grade dagger for herself. After that, they all go to the training grounds, where Samela asks Tiki to show her his big black sword. Lamia also tests out her magic ring as Samela gets on top of Tiki and tells him to unload all of his hot passion with his sword onto her. She jerks him around and says that she will take everything he has got, but Tiki still feels sick from overeating last night and ends up fainting. Tiki somehow manages to escape from there and goes to town to get some medicine. While out, he notices people staring at him and he wonders if they are looking at Ariel, but she says that she made it so only he can see her for now, so the people are actually looking at him. Just then, some kids walk up to him and call him the strong man from the war, and Tiki realizes that he has become somewhat popular among the crowd. He entertains them for a while and then walks into an empty street calling out to the person following him in the shadows. It turns out to be none other than One-Armed, who's feeling salty about Tiki getting all this fame. Tiki asks him what happened to his arm, and when he finds out that he's the one who took it, it makes him feel really sad. Kasem says that he has resolved to beat him and challenges him to a duel on his terms, or else he will poison all the wells in the city. He takes out the gadget he got from Ledra and says that this will put restrictions on Tiki's magic and make it equal to his own. This way, they can fight on equal grounds, and he can prove that he only lost to him due to his gifts. This obviously sounds like a bad idea, but being the alpha male he is, Tiki says that he can never back off from a fight like this and must prove his dominance. This makes Ariel mad, and she tells him not to come back crying if his power never returns. And the battle begins. Tiki starts it off using a wind blast, but Kasem dodges it and strikes back using a dagger. Tiki blocks it with his sword and then jumps back to shoot Kasem using ice and water bullets. Tiki rushes forward and knocks his dagger out of his hand, but Kasem gets him with some ice bullets, and the battle becomes intense. Grammy watches them from the corner as they beat the living daylights out of each other. At the end, they both wonder if they should keep fighting until one falls unconscious, but they decide on finishing it with their next move instead. Kasem charges up a massive ice spell and prepares to throw it towards Tiki, who seems pretty beat up and unable to dodge it because of his leg injury. Tiki thinks about Ren and his early magic lessons and decides to believe in himself. He puts some magic in his sword, uses it to slice through Kasem's ice spell, and sends him flying back into the wall from the shockwave. With this, their fight comes to an end, and Kasem accepts defeat, but Tiki says that he had at least an extra arm's worth of advantage, so it wasn't fair. After that, Ariel asks to return Tiki's magical power, and he tells them to destroy the magical gadget to return everything to normal. But before they can do anything, the dark aura around the gadget forms itself into a shadow monster and starts attacking Tiki. Tiki tries to fight back using wind magic, but it doesn't do any damage to the shadow monster, who strikes him back with a bunch of dark bullets. Things look bad for him, but Grammy suddenly comes out of her invisibility cloak and attacks the monster. Kasem distracts it using his ice magic and tells Grammy to destroy the gadget, but even after destroying it, the monster doesn't disappear. Kasem wonders if Lauder planned all of this as well. Tiki notices that his powers are back at least, and he says that he will blow the monster away with one attack. He tells Ariel to compress the surrounding air to form lightning and strikes the monster away with a lightning slash using his sword. After that, he gives a healing potion to Kasem, but Grammy tells him to stop crushing his pride even more. She says that he was just salty about losing to him, but now that they have fought on equal terms, he has accepted his defeat and will probably work hard to get stronger. She then helps him up and walks away with him, who now seems to have developed a healthy rivalry with Tiki. Just then, the city's bell starts ringing, and the speaker announces that the Duke's army has declared war. Tiki runs back to the castle to meet up with Ren and everyone else, and they all prepare for the war that's going to start the next day. At the same time, we see Lauder reporting to the mysterious lady about how Tiki dealt with the shadow monster, and she tells him to proceed with their next guidance. We also see the other hooded figure beside them, who looks quite similar to Inimicus. The next morning, Duke Dorsham addresses his army before marching toward the capital, and Marcus Marces asks for his permission to deal with the Otherworlders and Lemaya on his own. He says that he has made the necessary arrangements and won't disappoint him like Nilgan. After that, the Duke marches towards the capital and both armies come face to face. He asks Inimicus if they have any chance of victory, and he says that Marcus would take care of everyone other than Tiki, but he will make sure that he's not a problem for himself. On the other hand, Yomar raises his soldiers' morale with a speech and tells them to carve a path to victory for their kingdom as its heroes. With this, the war begins, and we see men clashing swords and magical spells getting tossed all over the battlefield. Ren and Mira dominate the battle, with Lemia destroying her opponents by using spells from her new magical ring. But then, they all get paired against their matches that Marseille prepared for them, and we see an A-ranked adventurer named Suzora face Ren. Marseille himself takes on Mira, while a sorcerer named Miss Folo challenges Lemia, using his jamming magic to jam all over her with his thick staff. Meanwhile, Tiki uses his wind magic to jump across the enemy forces and lands right in front of the Duke's camp while they are talking about their battle strategy. He simply walks in and tells the Duke to surrender. Dorsham tells everyone except Animecus to walk outside, and he talks to Tiki about his proposal. Tiki says that if he tells his men to surrender right now, he will make sure that the king shows him mercy. Otherwise, he has enough power to beat him up and bring his head back to the king himself. Hearing this, Dorsham asks him why he doesn't become a king himself. Tiki says that it would be too much of a hassle, and he doesn't want to become hated by thousands of people by becoming a dictator who does whatever he wants. Hearing this makes Dorsham laugh, and he says that growing up in a peaceful world can really change a person's view. But then, he tells Tiki that it's a matter of pride, and sometimes people with power must go along with their decisions, even if it results in their demise. Tiki looks at his dumb face and wonders if he has gone senile like Joe Biden, while we see Animecus cooking up some dark spell behind everyone's back, which makes everyone in their army drink his dark juice. Back on the battlefield, Lamaya faces Miss Folo and asks him if he's just planning on wearing her down. He attacks her using ice magic, but she blocks it by summoning flames from the earth. He then sends out a bunch of ice bullets toward her, but she blocks them using defense magic and shoots him down with a wind blade. This surprises the old mage, and he accepts his defeat, telling Lemia to finish him off, which she does with a massive fireball. At the same time, Mira fights Marse using her flaming sword, but he knocks it up into the air and thinks that he will get to taste some elf meat tonight. But then she attacks him and slices his neck using the dagger she picked up from the royal collection. Ren, on the other hand, seems to be having trouble finishing her opponent. Suzora keeps the offense up and forces Ren to play on the defensive. It goes on for some time, but Ren finally finishes analyzing her moves and abilities and prepares to end the battle. She prepares to strike her with a flame spell, but Suzora jumps down, strikes the earth, and makes Ren fall back. Ren switches to ice magic and shoots some icicles toward her, but Suzora strikes them all away, only to realize that they were a distraction. As she looks up, she sees Ren above her with a massive fireball over her head. Ren shoots it down and takes a huge chunk of Suzora's HP, but then they notice the fallen soldiers around them acting weird as they surround them like zombies. Ren tells Suzora to join her if she wants to live, and they team up. Meanwhile, Tiki continues talking to the Duke about surrendering, but then Ariel notices Animecus' evil spell and tells Tiki about it. Hearing this, Animecus starts laughing and says that his spirit would obviously realize it. He reveals his true colors as the person who sparked this rebellion and made the Duke go against his own brother. He says that he prepared this battlefield with a spell called Darkness Curse beforehand, which makes everyone under his control go berserk and turn into slaying machines. He says that he did it all for that lady, referring to the mysterious mastermind, and that he could care less for this kingdom or the siblings' fight. He declares that he will turn everything to dust as his master wished. With that, he starts spreading the spell throughout the battlefield and turns into a demon as well. Back on the battlefield, we see Lamaya and Bella observing the spell over their heads and explaining that it's the same spell that was used 200 years ago during the battle between their neighboring nations, the Holy Skotel Empire and the Guardian Empire. While the battle was brief, the fallen soldiers turned into berserking zombies who attacked friends and foes alike. They made their way to the non-combatants as well, and by the end of it all, over 700,000 people lost their lives. This battle went down in history as the Bloody Rhapsody, and until they crush the source of this magic, they won't be able to bring everyone back to their senses. The spell will continue to spread among the living, and they will turn into mindless, battle-hungry zombies as well. Things start looking bad for both armies, as Lamaya and the others get surrounded by hordes of these mindless puppets. They decide to fight back and hope for Tiki to save the day using his plot armor. This takes us back to the Duke's camp, where Tiki unleashes his spirit power and prepares to use a full power attack that might cost him his life. He resolves to use everything this time to save his friends. But just before he can unleash all that power, Ariel stops time and says that she has been lying to him. She apologizes to him and says that she was afraid of her own power and didn't know how it would affect Tiki. That's why she only appeared in front of him in this semi-original form. She then says that after seeing his resolve, she now believes that he's ready to experience her in her real body and tells him her real name, Sophia. After that, time starts flowing normally again, and Ren makes her way to Tiki alongside Suzora and hugs him. Tiki notices that her leg is injured and says that he will end this war now so they can return home. He then raises his hand, calls Sophia out, and uses a special spell to break the Darkness Curse magic circle. This surprises everyone, and Suzora reveals that Sophia is the name of the Queen of Spirits, one of the 4 strongest spirits in the entire universe. With this, everything returns to normal, and Tiki says that he still needs to take care of the one behind all this. He prepares to fight Animecus in his devil form. He then charges up his new power, and they both fly up into the sky to start a Dragon Ball Z style fight. They clash against each other a couple of times before Tiki asks him about the mysterious lady. Animecus says that she is the ruler of this world and the one who planned everything, from Tiki's birth to his summoning in this world to this very day when he unlocks his true power as a summoner. He reveals that this world is headed toward a massive war, and to protect it, they need an ultimate weapon. Tiki will become that weapon for them. He further adds that all these battles Tiki fought so far were part of the lady's plan to make him stronger, and that he too is just a mere pawn in her grand scheme. Tiki asks him for her name, but Animecus says that it's not yet time for him to know. This makes Tiki really mad, and he says that he won't accept losing friends and so many lives over such an excuse. He continues punching the demon and eventually overpowers him as his rage builds up. He starts pounding him with his punches until he lands a heavy hit to his stomach, making him crash into the ground. Tiki then stands over him, and Animecus tells him to deliver the finishing blow, saying that being soft is his only remaining weakness. But Tiki tells him that he left his humanity behind when he accepted this power and evaporates him using a strong lightning attack. With this, the war comes to an end. We see Tiki waking up in the castle with Ren, Lamaya, and Mira by his side. They fill him in on everything since he defeated Animecus, and Alcena and Charlotte also run in to ask if he is alright. Apparently he ran out of magic and was asleep for many days, but now he is considered the hero of the kingdom. The king grants them the title of advisor to the royal army and makes them join their ranks as special forces to be summoned when the kingdom is in trouble. Yomar also puts his brother down for the act of rebellion, and peace returns to the kingdom for the time being. We see Tiki wondering if he might turn into a monster due to this power, but Lemia reassures him that no matter how much power he gains, he will remain human if his heart is in the right place. She cheers him up, and they all decide to return to Aspire to continue their training. Charlotte and Alcena see them off, and Charlotte promises to find a way to return them to their worlds. Tiki tells her to take her time because they don't mind spending more time with their new friends in this world. With that, they set off back to Aspire, and Tiki says that he will grow strong enough to never let any of his friends get hurt again, while the mysterious mastermind lady watches over him through her crystal wall. To all Leaf Village ninjas, that is it for today. Recap, do not forget to join our clan, our army, my friend. You can do that by clicking that red button below the video, destroy it for me with that bell. To follow us in YouTube with many videos to come in the following days. So see you later, bro. Peace out.